Sato ma sadagamaya tamaso omaham jyotirgamaya mrityormam amritam gamaya Avir, avir, mairhi, Rudra, yate, dakshinam, mukham, tena maham, pahinityam. Om. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality, and reach us through and through ourselves, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. So my subject this morning is, what is Maya? Talking about a fundamental teaching of the Advaita Vedanta philosophy. This doctrine of Maya is a very simple statement of facts about the way things are in this world. The fact is that we live in a relative world where everything is characterized by the play of the pairs of opposites. And if I look out from the podium into the temple, I can see, oh, well, there's left, and there's right, and there's the front, and there's the back, and there's up, and there's down, and there's men, there's women, there's tall, and there's short, and maybe more abstractly, there's good, and there's bad, there's right, and there's wrong, there's truth, and there's falsehood. And so the world, this relative world, is characterized by the play of the pairs of opposites. Now, it's a philosophical question as to why is that so? Why is it that everything comes in pairs? And the answer is that really we can't, that they are correlatives. That is, we can't think of one without the other. You can't think of up without down. You can't even conceive of what is right unless you contrast it with left. What is good, what is bad, what is success, what is failure, what's happiness, what's misery. They go together. They work together. We can't understand one without the other. They're two parts of the same thing. That, in fact, we could say, metaphorically, that everything in this world is a coin with two sides. And every peaked mountain has a valley. And every red rose has its thorns. Every cresting wave will have its trough. Every flow tide will have its ebb tide. And so like this, We can look on one side of the coin, on the other side of the coin. They both go together. And so then we may ask ourselves, okay, well, so what? And if you say, so what are the implications of that observation about the relative world? And the problem is that it puts us into a dilemma. It places us, that is jivatmans, that is embodied souls, the human predicament, it places us in a double bind. Because certainly we are seeking happiness and fulfillment and success. But if everything is a coin that has two sides, that the more as we seek happiness, then misery will come along with it. If we pursue the good, that the evil will come along with it. And that however much we try to engaged in this pursuit, we find ourselves caught in this double bind where we reach for happiness and we get the happiness, but we also get misery along with it. Somehow, the little unit of happiness that we have in our hand, we look there and, well, it has some misery in it also. It's kind of hidden maybe underneath it, hidden inside of it, on the other side of it. And that's very frustrating because we don't want happiness. Now I'm speaking more abstractly now, but the same pairs of opposites, happiness and misery, good and evil. We don't want happiness that's tainted with suffering. We don't want good that is contaminated with evil. We don't want, when we seek for self-fulfillment and success, we don't want the half-baked success. We don't want limited, transient happiness and joy and success in life. What we want is infinite. No, I say when we. Who do I mean by we? By we, I'm assume that this is a subject that is addressed to those who have an awakening of spiritual consciousness. By we, I mean all of us who are on the mystic path, who aspire to, and what is the goal of the mystic way? It's prompted by a hunger for the absolute, a longing for the absolute. That's the fundamental drive behind all forms of spiritual practice to achieve infinite, perfect, absolute happiness and joy and goodness. And yet, when we do so, whenever we try to do so, we find that we are frustrated in our endeavors. We can't find that. That is, our goal is to pursue. We are in pursuit of the absolute in the relative world. And as long as we pursue the absolute happiness, joy, goodness, peace, success, self-fulfillment in the relative world, we will be doomed to failure. It's impossible. And that's the teaching this morning. Well, some time ago I attended in, it was in the Playhouse, La Jolla Playhouse. Attended a stage play there entitled Notes from Underground by the Russian writer Dostoevsky. And the protagonist of that, in that short novel, this is one of the fundamental source books of the philosophy of existentialism, which shares some of our thematic this morning. The protagonist is the underground man. And he lives underground, literally, because he is alienated from the world. He's alienated from society, he's alienated from God and from himself. And he's very frustrated, and he's very angry. And one of his problems is that he suffers from hyperconsciousness. When in playing the chess game of life, he finds that every time he also seeks happiness, he also seeks self-fulfillment, but he has hyperconsciousness. And whenever he goes to make a move in the chess game, he can see 3 or 4 moves ahead, and he always thinks twice when he sees the implications of what he's going to do. He thinks twice about it, moves the piece back. So like that, okay, then he makes another move, thinks twice about that, moves it back. So like that, he gets into, it's kind of a back, it's called, in psychology it's called like cognitive dissonance, like your washing machine, it goes on, off, on, off. Pretty soon it's shaking like this, it starts to disintegrate. His problem, hyperconsciousness. Analysis leads to paralysis. He can't move. He wants to move. He wants to do something. But he also wants to avoid suffering and pain and loss. And therefore, he's driven into a state of existential despair because he can't make a move and he can't do nothing either. And so, this is Maya. And this is Maya. Sometimes our predicament in this world has been aptly described. In ancient times, if we read some of the Greek myths, apropos to our discussion this morning is the myth of Sisyphus. And there was a king. His name was Sisyphus. He was the king of Corinth in ancient Greece. And he was an independent and fearless king. And his attitude towards the gods, this is now in pre-Socratic times, Homer's Iliad and all that, when the gods, the belief in the gods was still very strong. But his attitude towards the gods was one of bold defiance. And on one occasion, Zeus came down to the earth and abducted the daughter one of the architects of Corinth. An ordinary man would have accepted that behavior, that typical behavior of the gods. An ordinary man would have passively accepted it without protest, but not Sisyphus. Sisyphus, in fact, led a protest against the gods and against Zeus. And Zeus was very vexed with this mere mortal. On another occasion, Sisyphus saw that Mr. Death, that is the Greek embodied god of death, not the god, but I mean the embodiment of death, Thanatos, was roaming in his kingdom. People were dying right and left. And so there he went in pursuit of that personification of death, bound him up in chains and threw him in a dungeon. Yeah, pretty soon no one else was dying. This is very good. Yeah, but the problem is that down in the underworld, that is the Lord of the underworld, he saw that he was no longer, he wasn't having any more customers coming in. No one was dying. And so he also complained, Hades complained to the gods, is disrupting the whole natural order of things. Something has to be done. Well, Sisyphus, before he died, he very cleverly instructed his wife. He said, when I die, he said, don't bury me. Just leave my body there in the marketplace. Leave it there by the side of the road, and don't give me an official, formal burial at all. And she didn't understand, protested, but he insisted. And in fact, when he died, he went down into the underworld, and there he put his plan into action, because after a short period of time, he went and approached the Lord of the underworld, asked him, said, revered sir, he said, I know this is my fate, but please, you can see up there what's happened. My wife hasn't even given me a decent burial. Please allow me to return just for one day, just to see that I can have a decent burial. And so Hades said, yes, well, okay, I'll give you permission. Gave him permission. And so Sisyphus returned to the earth, and there he was. He saw the sun was shining and the birds were singing. And well, one day passed, 2 days passed, he decided to stay on. He stayed on and I lived many more years, much to the vexation of the gods. But when Sisyphus finally did die, he was condemned to the deepest hells of Tartarus. And there he was condemned to roll a rock, pictured in many a theme there of many romantic artists. Sisyphus pushing that huge rock slowly, slowly up the hill, doomed to see it teeter and to totter on the top and then roll down again. And then, having seen that all of his efforts come to nothing, he walks down the hill and begin again. And the gods thought that there could be no more dreadful punishment for a man than just to do meaningless work for all eternity. So this is the plight of Sisyphus, of course, is the plight of us all. All of us, we're kind of in the same condition. We also are working in pursuit of happiness and success, looking onward and upward, struggling to achieve our life's goals. And we can, of course, we can achieve our life's goals. We can achieve success. We can achieve those peak experiences just like Sisyphus did. He got the rock to the top. He was successful. But whatever goes up, that's the rule. Whatever goes up must come down. It is Maya. This is just the way things are. And that it may not come down tomorrow, or it may not come down next week or next month, or even in this lifetime. But eventually, the great cycle, there's a great cycle, a great circular movement. And you may say, well, gee, that's so pessimistic. You may say, we came here this morning just to have a little inspiration, just to have a little spiritual upliftment. Isn't this such a negative, pessimistic? No. This doctrine of Maya is not optimistic. It's not unrealistic Pollyanna optimism, that's true. But it's also not pessimism, because there's no denial that you can achieve happiness, you can achieve all of success and peak experiences. There's no denial of the it's the overview of the great cycle of transmigration. There's an evolution and there's an involution. And there is a whole progression. So this doctrine of Maya is neither optimism nor pessimism. It's kind of it's an overview. Synthesis, right? Of the two. But let's continue here to look at some of the implications. We begin with the facts. Now we have to draw the implications of the facts for ourselves. That is, humankind, mankind. We're struggling to achieve happiness in this world. And let's look at some of the implications of this. I'm giving you this is the teaching. This is not a dogma that comes down from on high that you have to believe in. You have to process this in the factory of your own mind and see if you believe this. I'm a salesman of this religion. I'm going to try to convince you that this is true. Maybe you're not going to be convinced. And well, let's look here. If this is this doctrine of Maya, it's also, it's called the great law of balance. The great law of balance. If everything is a coin that has two sides, then the two sides are always in balance. The good and the evil, and the happiness and the misery, and the success and the failure are always going to be existing together. And that if we increase the one, then we'll have to increase the other. If one decreases, then the other one will decrease. And the great law of balance will remain. We've discussed this in many other occasions when we talk about the law of karma. Now, well, that's kind of a thesis that kind of contradicts our whole Enlightenment view of progress, of moving onward and upward. We were always taught and kind of understood that slowly, historically, we look back through history that it's kind of like a stairway to heaven. The things are slowly getting better and better, and where the good is our ideal. I mean, that's the whole ideal of utilitarianism, to gradually achieve that ultimately we can increase the happiness and decrease the suffering, and ultimately envision some millennial utopian future in which we can achieve a heaven on earth. And that's kind of the idea that we have, this basic fundamental belief that forget about the whole universe, just think about yourself. You can think about yourself in your life, I'm making progress. Yeah. If you think about yourself, you think every day, I've got to do this, then I got to do this, then I got to do this, and I like this, I'm going to make progress. And at the end of the day, I could have checked all these things off, and now I've made progress. But here we're kind of questioning, this is philosophy questioning, well, wait a minute, now what is progress? Is there actually progress? Whether it's in the macrocosm or the microcosm. We're talking this morning more about macrocosm. And by the way, on other occasions, we have discussed in detail different approaches to this discussion of the doctrine of Maya, and we've analyzed it on other occasions as a psychological phenomena, which is quite that's a whole different approach. This morning we're talking more about an empirical macrocosmic condition of the predicament of mankind, our predicament. So question is about progress. Maybe we need to think a little bit about progress. We need to think a little bit about, recall some of the lessons of history as to ask, have we really made progress? We can ask ourselves, for example, in medical technology, just to take an example at random, certainly we know that we've made great progress in the understanding of sanitation and the discovery of miracle drugs, and today medical technology all but eliminated all of those terrible infectious diseases and plagues that wiped out whole populations. All of that is, we've progressed beyond that. And longevity has increased. And so on many different, infant mortality has decreased, and so many different parameters, by so many different standards, we can say, yes, there has been progress. But if we look more closely, we can say, well, yeah, longevity has increased, but on the other hand, there are a lot of new ailments that come along with longevity. And physically we live longer, but now all kind of mental problems arise. And there seems to be, if you go back in the days of Swami Vedarupananda in New York City, he visited a hospital there, hospital in New York City, well, maybe 80% of the beds in the hospital were filled. Today, maybe if you go to New York City, you go to the same hospital, what do you see? Well, you see 80% of the beds are still full. So it's kind of that is, we have gained on the one hand, you've given with one hand and taken away with the other. It's kind of like chronic rheumatism. You wake up in the morning and your arm is kind of all stiff and it has a pain in your arm, and you go to the doctor, maybe he gives you some shot of cortisone or something. Now your arm feels a lot better. Next morning you get up, your other arm hurts. So now that arm, now you get to work on that arm, you get to massage that arm. Okay, the next morning you get up, your leg hurts. It's called chronic rheumatism. It just moves from one place to another. Yeah, you've shifted it around a little bit. You've improved on one side, but you've gained the gain on one side, loss on the other side. There's a great law of balance. And this is why ideas like a millennial world or like a utopian world are paradoxical, contradictory ideas. Something like dark light or hot ice or something like that. That it's an impossibility, a logical impossibility, because of that's not the nature of things. The nature of things is to abide in the great law of balance. You remember that famous novel written by H.G. Wells? It's called The Time Machine. Well, that's a very old novel. I'm sure many of you have read that. The time traveler, he builds an apparatus with all the levers and dials on this machine. He gets on his machine and turns the levers, and you see he goes through a blurring time, and he arrives now 1,000 years ahead of time. He's moved ahead, far ahead. And he's one to question in his mind. He's a philosopher. He wonders, what is the future of mankind? Has man destroyed himself? Has things gotten better? They gotten worse? Then his machine lands, and he gets off the machine, climbs, looks there. He's on a little hilltop. He looks down. What does he see? Oh, he hears laughter. He looks down. He sees there's a whole people down there. There's an orchard there with the fruits hanging from the trees, and these people are they're happy, they're playing and they're laughing and they're smiling. If they get hungry, they just reach up and they pluck a fruit from the tree there and they eat it. And he thinks, yes, very good. Yeah, this is the future. This is the future. How things have improved. You see how wonderful what a wonderful world it has become. And he's feeling so happy until later. Then the sun begins, late afternoon. Time passes, sun begins to set. Then he looks and he sees these people, the Eloi they're called. They're not smiling anymore. They're not laughing anymore. In fact, fear has come into their eyes, and they're rushing and scurrying here this way and that way, trying to find some shelter, some in their house. They're locking their doors, because now the sun is setting. And with the darkness come the Morlocks. These are the guys who live underground. That's the evil that's been repressed, right? Dissociation, repression. That's our psyche. It's all in the deep in our psyche. We're happily along, enjoying our life happily. But there's also, there are the Morlocks. So they come up and they reign during the time of the darkness. And so the traveler realizes, that we haven't made any progress at all. Just move things around a little bit. Certainly the situation has changed, but the great law of balance remains. This is Maya. This is the nature of Maya. And of course, oftentimes we don't want to accept reality. We live in forgetfulness of the nature of things, and we continue to feel that we can achieve our goal, what is our goal? Our goal is to realize the absolute. Our goal is to realize ourself. Our goal is to become who we really are. Our goal is to find happiness, not half-baked and transient small happiness, but and so we think that somehow we can do that in this world. Somehow we can straighten things out. The whole world's a mess. Maybe my life is a mess. So I think, okay, I better straighten it out. So that's my project, is straighten out the world. And the problem is, this is the world of Maya. That however much you straighten things out, it all gets messed up again. And you remember about the story about the dog's curly tail. Once upon a time, there was a man, a poor man, who wanted to get rich quick. And he had tried everything by hook or by crook to make money. Everything had failed. And he was very depressed. One day he got a bright idea. If I could just get a ghost to work for me, that would solve my problems. Now, where can I find a ghost? He thought, ghost, yes. Oh, I have to find some saint or some sage. They know how to conjure up spirits. And so he went in search of a sage, traveled far and wide, finally came to a forest, went deep into the forest. There he looked there he saw under the tree, there sat a sage. Long matted hair, long white beard, his eyes were closed, and he was meditating before a duni fire. Ah, yes, the sage goes up there quietly, goes up prostrated before the sage. Revered sir, addressed him, yes, revered. Please, I request your boon from you. I want to have a ghost to work for me. And the sage said, well, you don't want that. That's no, please. The man begged and pleaded, came back the next day and pleaded. Finally, the sage said, okay. I'll give you a mantra that will conjure up a ghost. Go and repeat it 3 times, but I have to warn you that if you get that ghost, that when he comes, you have to keep him busy. Otherwise, he will eat you up. Oh, no problem, said the man. Yes, I'll do that. He listened, he got the mantra, went there, very religiously repeated it 3 times. There the ghost appears before him. And give me work. What shall I do? Give me work or I'll eat you up. Work? Of course, said the man. Of course I'll give you work. First thing, I said, I'd like to have a nice place to live. Build me a mansion here in which I can live happily. And the ghost turned. He goes like, it's done. There it is. Look, the man looked over there. What? There it is. There's a big mansion. It was right there. He thought, give me work, said the ghost. What? The man says, well, I'd like to have around here, I'd like to have a view of a lake, maybe in trees and flowers and a nice village maybe nearby. Done, it's done, said the ghost. Looks over, and he looked over, and sure enough, there was a beautiful lake. There were trees, flowers blooming there, people walking around. And the ghost then demanding more work. Give me work or I'll eat you up. And the man says, well, please prepare for me. I want to invite all the guests of the village for a great feast. Celebrate my good fortune. Please prepare tables and tables of foods for this feast. And the ghost, with a wave of his hand, is done. He looks over, all the feast is prepared. The man looked, he said, "Sir," he said, "yes, thank you very much. Please allow me I'd like to go and change clothes so that I can entertain my guests and enjoy this wonderful feast. Please excuse me just for a moment." And he went into a room, closed the door, looked around. There was a window, opened the window, jumped out the window, and he ran and he ran. Until there he finally ran back, returning to the sage. Behind him was that ghost, coming through the forest. And he fell at the feet of the sage. "Sir, revered sir, you were right. Please forgive me, but now I'm in a terrible predicament. Please save me from this ghost coming." Well, the sage had compassion on him. So you see that dog, cut off his curly tail. Give it to that ghost when he arrives. And so the ghost arrives, "Give me work to do." And the man had cut off the curly tail, handed it to the ghost. "Here, straighten out this tail." And so the ghost straightened it out. "Here it is." It curled up again. Straightened it out, it curled up again. And like that, the ghost then began to focus his concentration, and time passed, minutes passed, hours passed, days passed. The ghost finally realized that he was trapped, that he could never do what he had been commanded to do by his master. And so he pleaded to find some release from his predicament. And so this world is like a dog's curly tail. And insofar as we attempt to realize our aspirations for the absolute in this relative world, then we will be frustrated like the ghost, that we will be like the ghost. We will be, that is, in this relative world, we will be unable to discover what we really seek. Yes, we can find happiness. We can find some temporary, limited, transient happiness and success and fulfillment. But this will not satisfy us. Why? Yovai bhuma tatsugam nalpe sugamasti. That means, what is happiness? It's defined there in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. What is happiness? Happiness means the feeling that you have when you expand and become infinite. Happiness is in the infinite, it is not in the finite. We can never, by the laws of our own being, that is, of course, I've assumed a lot of first principles here this morning, fundamental teaching of this Vedanta philosophy, is that you are an infinite being. You are a divine immortal soul. The fundamental law of your being is that you will seek every moment of your life, consciously or unconsciously, you are in search of the absolute. That means yourself. You are struggling to become who you really are. What are you really? You really are an infinite being. You can never be satisfied with finite things because you are an absolute. Absolute means Brahman. It means the Brahman is the absolute, is not the relative. You can never find the absolute in the relative. You can never discover the infinite in the finite. And you can never discover that which is perfect. That's our goal. Our goal is to become perfect. Of course, Vedanta doesn't say that. Vedanta says you already are perfect. You already are infinite. So to remove our false beliefs about who we really are, that's our project. And The beauty of this doctrine of Maya is that it makes explicit our predicament. Makes it clear to us that that which we seek is not in this world. There is a higher, of course, that's the teaching of the Vedanta philosophy. There is a higher world. It's called the Paramartika Satyam. This is the relative world. This is a lower reality. It's higher, it's better than a dream. In dream is just an appearance. It's just an illusion. This is not an illusion. This is reality. But it's relative reality. And there is a higher reality that is called Brahman. That is our goal. That is that is our true nature, and that is what we seek. And so this doctrine of Maya, that's the beauty of this doctrine, makes explicit this doctrine and gives us some dispassion for the world. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's kind of an otherworldly teaching. Well, in a sense, yes. But that's the idea of Maya, this world of Maya. Remember Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel? You always have a choice. Vedanta at least gives you a choice here if you read the Gospel. You can choose between whether you regard this world as a mansion of mirth or as a framework of illusion. Those are the two choices you have. I remember at one time, a little long ago, went with a family to Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain. The big attraction in Magic Mountain is the roller coasters. And when you enter through the gates, the first thing you hear is the cries of happiness and joy of many children riding on the roller coasters. And so I remember that day. We spent passed the day very happy, and had enjoyed the whole day. And but then later on, the afternoon, became afternoon. That was 4:30, 5 o'clock. Time to leave. Standing on the platforms, those roller coasters are still running, and they still are filled with children. And the adults standing there on the platform, they're looking at their watches. They also realize it's time to leave. You see the roller coasters going round and round, up and down, round and round. That's the Maya. And the children, they don't want to leave. They protest. They don't want to leave that. Get on another ride again, up and down, round and round. Well, the point is that sometime in the course of our evolution, we become older and wiser. Realize that we stop the world and let me off. That is, this is a call to transcendence, to transcend this world. That there is a higher world, there is a higher truth. And this doctrine of Maya clearly explicates that, this teaching, and gives us some viveka and vairagya, that is, some clear discrimination and a feeling of dispassion that will enable us to realize that which we seek. Om Dyo Shanti Antariksha Shanti Prithivi Shanti Apa Shanti Oshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shantihi Sarvam Shantihi Shantireva Shantihi Same Shantiredhi Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om. Peace is in heaven, peace is on the earth, peace is in the sky and in the waters. The herbs and plants and trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. May this eternal universal peace enter our souls and beings. Om. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.